Hey guys, it's Kate, and I hope you're having a fabulous day today. I'm back with another gouache video, and so I broke out my mixed media journal with some a little bit thicker paper, but it's pretty smooth, and my Shinhan gouache, I can't talk today, gouache set that I got on Amazon and did an unboxing. I've been really enjoying playing with it, so I thought I'd come back today with a little doodly sketch of some flowers in a pot. And I guess we'll call it a clay pot because that's what it kind of turned into. But I just did a very simple pencil drawing first so I could make sure to get everything where I wanted it. And then I'm going to go over it with ink with my fine liner so that it'll be kind of like a line and wash. And I'm going to be using my gouache almost like watercolor today for the first layer. I had some dried up in my palette, some black, some burnt sienna, some ultramarine blue, I think it's their Viridian, and the yellows and reds. And I'm going in first with a very watered down ultramarine and burnt sienna mix. And I love those colors together because you get these really beautiful earthy tones, and it's just perfect for like a little clay pot. And so I'm going in with that layer and just sort of mixing them together. Now, even though I'm using this like watercolor, it doesn't spread like it does on watercolor paper. So this is just plain mixed media paper. So it kind of stays kind of put where you have it. It doesn't blend quite the same way, but it also has some really interesting effects on this kind of paper. So as long as you're kind of prepared for that, when you paint this way, you can get some really interesting looks. But what I ended up doing is going very transparent with it, and then later on I use a thicker application that's more opaque for my details, and I really liked the way that this one turned out. So I grabbed some nice watery well, more ultramarine, grabbed some yellow, made some green shades there in the mixing well, and you can see how watery it is. It's very watered down. It really is just like watercolor. And I'm filling in my different elements and getting some different color blends as I go so that each element is a little bit different than the one before. So I'm kind of going back and forth and letting things kind of dry so I don't get a lot of bleeding and combining of colors that I don't really want to blend. So now that my pot is a little bit drier, I'm going to go in and fill in those leaves that kind of overlap it a little bit. And I'm just playing around with my colors. So you can see the greens in those two different sets of leaves are slightly different. And I really like that. It just adds another sort of layer of interest. And then I'm going to even use another shade of green by adding some of that ultramarine and getting kind of a nice blue green that's darker. And I'm going to put those as sort of a contrasting color on those little leaves in front. So that'll just kind of help separate everything so it doesn't all blend together. So I'm getting all my greenery done first, and then I'm going to go into my flowers. But one of the things I really loved about this one was adding some pattern texture, kind of like the last painting I uploaded with the bird and the kind of folk art style. I really, turns out I really like that. So I have been playing around with some different shapes, and I'm doing this in sort of an art journal today, but you could also do these on like small watercolor cards and things like that. And they're very simple, but they're very pretty. And I have been pretty much making all the cards I give away in the past, I don't know, maybe a year or so. And little things like this, just flipping through my journal gives me a lot of inspiration on things that I can make to give away as gifts or as part of packaging or a card or something like that. And one thing I really like to do is paint watercolor paper, cut out my little painting, and then actually attach that, like glue it to a regular cardstock card. So it's just really nice that you can kind of create stuff like that. So hopefully this gives you some ideas of little kind of doodly drawings you can paint and have some fun with, and then use in part of another design or as a gift. So I used some different shades of reds and oranges. I really have been embracing that burnt sienna here, so there's a little bit of it in pretty much all the flowers. And I like the color tones here. Everything is slightly muted, and it started off with that pot with the ultramarine and burnt sienna. So now I'm going in with a little bit of a thicker blend, and I'm starting off with some white details on that middle flower. And I'm going to be adding just little elements to pretty much everything, including the pot. Now, white gouache is also really nice to use with your actual watercolor paintings if you don't have masking fluid, or you just decide you really want some highlight somewhere. Having a tube of white gouache is really handy. Before I got this set, I used a Winsor Newton white designer gouache tube that I always have in my little art cart next to where I sit. So you just never know when it'll come in handy. So even if you don't get a set of gouache to paint with, it's nice to have just the tube of white. So now I'm starting on my bottom pot. I'm letting my flowers and everything dry up there. And I'm starting off with the ultramarine, and I'm going to add a little bit of a pattern to the bottom. And just like the details on the flowers, I'm using a bit of a thicker coat of paint, so it definitely has full coverage. And I'm just kind of going through and making a little design pattern with dashes and dots. And all together, they ended up looking really cool. Almost like a Southwest pattern or something like that. So I have the ultramarine, and I'm really sticking with a bit of a limited palette and just blending my colors. So I'm going back to the burnt sienna and adding some patterns with that. So those colors really go with the pot itself. And I'm using a number 2 round brush, but any kind of fine brush will work if you're working on kind of a fine pattern like I am here. It helps the paint go down nice and easy. You can get into those really small, tight spaces, and I like making dots, so it's really helpful for that. So I'm just adding a few final touches. I wanted to try to decorate everything on this page, and I was just having a really nice time with it. So putting in some blue stripes around the rim of the pot, and I'm going to add some more dots. And then I remember sitting here and thinking, boy, those legs look bare. So I had to add something there too. So I just kind of repeated the lines down below that are on the rim, so it sort of brings it all together. It's nice to have the repeating pattern in some spots, and it just looks like it belongs there. So now I'm back to the leaves because those are dry, and I'm putting in some different patterns on those and making sure that I'm picking out a contrasting color, but I'm just dipping into the same puddles of paint that I had there before and adding some color here and there to change the blend. So I'm doing the leaf details in a much darker color, and I have the light details on the flowers, and I really like how this one turned out. It didn't take very long, and it was nice to kind of split up the different sections of the painting and let one dry while I worked on another one. So I kind of kept a good rhythm the whole time on this page. But we're getting into the home stretch. I decided I needed some dark outline on these lighter leaves, so I'm just going over those. And I almost, looking back at it now, I almost would have liked to do some more with my fine liner. Like, I kind of like going over some of those outlines a couple of times loosely, so it almost looks like a scribbly drawing. And I really like that look, and that might be something we can do again. But here is the close-up of what I finished. I hope this gives you some ideas or you enjoyed watching it. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep creating.